and gentlemen, this is Miss Humbert, and today we're going to move forward in Unit 4, and we're going to talk about factoring quadratics by grouping. So we're going to do a little bit of a review from yesterday, because what you learned yesterday you need to know in order to do today. So if you don't understand yesterday's stuff, you might want to take some time to work with Miss Humbert to make sure you understand it. Okay, so let's start by taking a look at number 1. So I'm hoping you guys are getting to the point where you don't have to write out these lists anymore. That you can look at 4 and you can look at 12 and you can know that the GCF is going to be 4. If you can't, continue making these lists like I showed you. You can use your multiplication chart to do that. Oops. Okay, so the biggest number both these lists have in common is 4. Now, I can't take an x out of each term because there isn't an x in that term. So all I can take out is 4. So I'm dividing each of those by 4. And then I'm left with x minus 3. Now, when I'm taking a look at 9 and 15, the biggest number that divides 9 and 15 is 3. Now I see that there's no x in that second term, so I can't take out an x. So all I'm doing are dividing each of these by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3, and then I have x squared. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So we have 3 times 3x squared plus 5. Taking a look at number 3, I want to figure out what divides 2, 4, and 10. And the only number that divides 2, 4, and 10 is 2. And I can't take any x's out because that 10 term doesn't have an x in it. So I'm dividing everything by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so that just leaves me with x cubed, or you could write 1x cubed. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, and then we want to keep our x squared. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. So this right here is your final answer for number 3. So now let's take a look and see how we're going to apply this. So we use factoring by grouping and the distributive property when we're factoring polynomials with 4 terms. So that is the biggest thing you need to know going into this, that everything needs to have 4 terms in order for us to use this method. If it doesn't, then right now the only thing we can do is what we did yesterday. So let's take a look at the next one, steps to factoring by grouping. Please make sure you have these steps written down so that if you get stuck, you can look and just follow through the steps. Step number 1. Put the first 2 terms with parentheses and last 2 terms in parentheses. So we're going to make 2 groups, group 1, group 2. Then you're going to pull out the greatest common factor out of each group. And when you do that, if we're doing factoring by grouping correctly, your leftover parentheses should be matching. Then you're going to write the matching parentheses as a single parentheses, and then whatever left over, those greatest common factors that you pulled out, that's going to go in another parenthesis. Then you're going to write the parenthesis as 2 binomials being multiplied together. So kind of what we used to use the box for. That's what your answer is going to look like. So let's go ahead and take a look. If you haven't finished writing it down, go ahead and pause the video. So let's take a look at what this is going to look like. So step number 1 is to make 2 groups. So I'm going to make group 1 and group 2. So then I'm just going to ignore the second group and I'm going to focus on the first group. So I want to figure out what divides x squared and x to the first. Well, my coefficients are 1 and 2. And so the GCF of 1 and 2 is just 1. Okay, then I have x squared times x to the first. So the smallest amount of x's I have is x to the first. So now I'm going to take and divide each of these terms by 1x. Well, x squared divided by x, so 2 minus 1 is just going to leave you with x. 2 divided by 1 is 2, and x over x is going to cancel out. So then we're left with x times x plus 2. We're done with the first group. Let's take a look at the second group. So for the second group, we have 4 and 8. So I'm asking myself, okay, what divides 4 and 8? And that's going to be 4. So I'm just going to write plus 4 onto what I've already written. And then I'm going to take and divide each of these terms by 4. 4 divided by 4 is just 1, and then so that just leaves me with x. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So then the next step says that your leftovers should match. So I look here, I have x plus 2 and x plus 2. So notice how those 2 parentheses are the same. So that means I'm going to write those 2 parentheses as 1. So now I just got rid of this guy, and I got rid of this guy. So I'm going to go and make my second parenthesis. To make my second parenthesis, I'm going to take those terms that were left over. which is our 1x plus 4. So that second parenthesis is just made of our two greatest common factors that we took out. And this right here is our answer for number 4. Next, let's take a look at number 5, sorry. So we're going to start by making our two groups. First, we want to look at the first group, and we want to figure out what the GCF of 3 and 6 is. So what divides 3 and what divides 6? And that's going to be 3. Here we have x squared, and here we have x to the first. So we want to think, okay, what divides x squared and x to the first? And that answer is x, okay? Because that's our smallest number of exponents. So we're going to take and we're going to divide each of these terms by 3x. Well, 3 over 3 cancels out. X squared divided by x to the first, subtract those exponents, and you just get x. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and x over x cancels out. So we're just left with x minus 2 in that parenthesis. Now we want to figure out what divides 9 and 18. And what divides 9 and 18? Well, the answer for that is going to be 9. So I'm taking and I'm dividing each of these terms by 9. Well, 9 over 9 is going to cancel out, and we're just left with an x. Remember, we couldn't take an x out as a GCF because that 18 doesn't have an x. Now we're going to take and divide 18 by 9. Well, negative 18 divided by 9 is going to give us negative 2. So now I notice that my leftovers here are matching. X minus 2 and x minus 2, those are the same. So I'm going to take them and write them as one parenthesis, and then I'm going to completely get rid of those two parentheses. In my second parenthesis, I'm going to write the two terms that were left over. So that was 3x plus 9 goes in the second parenthesis. And this right here is my final answer for number 5. Okay, next, let's take a look at number 6. So for number 6, again, making our groups. So we have one group and two groups. So between 2 and 5, the only thing we can divide 2 and 5 by is 1. So I'm just going to write out a 1. So here we have x squared and x to the first. So our smallest amount of x's is x to the first. So now I'm going to take and divide each of these terms by 1x to the first. Well, 2 divided by 1 is just 2. X squared divided by x to the first is just going to give me x. 5 divided by 1 is 5. And then x over x is going to cancel out. So I'm left with 2x plus 5. Now, between 4x and 10, the only thing that divides 4x, or 4 and 10, is 2. And I can't take out an x because there isn't an x in the last term. So I'm going through and dividing each of those coefficients by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and then I need to have that x there. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So now I must have done it right because my leftovers are matching. So I'm going to take that out and I'm going to write those as one parenthesis. And I'm going to get rid of those. And then I'm going to write what's left after that, which is x plus 2. So I took those parentheses out and then I took these two terms and put them in their own parenthesis. Okay, let's take a look at number 7. So for number 7, we want to factor by grouping. So between 5 and 15, we can divide out a 5 and an x. So, because this is x to the first. So now I'm going to divide each of these terms by 5x. 5 over 5 is 1. X squared over x is just x. 15 divided by 5 is 3. X over x cancels out. Then we're looking into our second group. So between 10 and 30, we can divide out a 10. So we're dividing each term by 10. 10 over 10 cancels out, and then we have x, and then 30 divided by 10 is negative 3. So now I notice that these leftovers are matching. Even though this has a 1x and this doesn't, remember that means the same thing. So I can factor that out as x minus 3. So my leftovers are matching, so I can take that out. And then I'm going to write what was left after that. So that's 5x plus 10 in the second parenthesis. So this right here is my final answer for number 7. Let's do a couple more examples. So for number 8, we want to take and make our group. So group and group. So between 3 and 8, we can't divide any number. The only number that divides 3 and 8 is 1. So I'm going to write a 1. Between x squared and x to the first, I can take out an x. And so then I'm going to get when I divide each of these by 1x. So 3 divided by 1 is 3. X squared divided by x is just x. Negative 8 divided by 1 is negative 8, and our x's cancel. Now here's something new. Notice that the middle sign right here, this middle sign between the two groups is negative. If the middle sign between the two groups is negative, I want you to take out a negative GCF. So we're going to take out a negative GCF. So between 6 and 16, you can take out a 2. So now I'm actually going to divide both of these terms by a negative 2. So negative 6 divided by negative 2 is going to give me a positive 3 and an x. 16 divided by negative 2 is going to give me a negative 8. So notice by taking out a negative GCF, that's what made my leftovers match. So I can factor out this 3x minus 8. So if these signs in the middle aren't the same, you did something wrong. So check to make sure you didn't need to take out a negative GCF. So then x minus 2 is left over, so you're going to write x minus 2. And that right there is your final answer for number 8. We're going to go ahead and we're going to skip number 9 because it actually doesn't work out for us. Let's take a look at number 10. So for number 10, again, you want to factor by grouping. All of our signs are positive, so we don't have to worry about taking out a negative GCF. Between 4 and 6, you can take out a 2 and an x. So I'm dividing each of the first terms by 2x. 4 divided by 2 is 2. X squared divided by x is going to give you x. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and x over x cancels. Now if you look at that second group, between 2x and 3, I can't take out a GCF. And I can't take out an x because there's no x in that term. So all I can take out is a 1. So I'm going to write that plus 1 there. And when I divide things by 1, they just end up being the same thing. That's good though because our leftovers still match. So because our leftovers still match, we can factor those out. 2x plus 3, I got rid of those. And then I'm going to write what's left after that, which is 2x plus 1. So I have 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 1. So this right here is your final answer for number 10. Let's take a look at number 11. So again, we're going to factor by grouping. Between 6 and 9, we can take out a 3, and we can also take out an x to the first from each term. So we're going to divide each term by 3x. And that gives us 2x minus 3. Now I notice that between 2x minus 3 and 2x minus 3, I can't take anything out. So I'm going to take out a plus 1. So then here, my leftovers are matching, so I can write out 2x minus 3. And once I get rid of those, I'm going to write out what's left after that, which is 3x plus 1. So this right here is your final answer for number 11. Let's take a look at number 12. So we're going to factor this guy by grouping, making our two groups. Between 14 and 5, there's nothing you can divide out, so I'm just going to divide out an x. So when you divide each of those by x, you're left with 14x plus 5. So here there's a negative GCF, and there's a negative sign in the middle, so I need to take out a negative GCF. Between 28x and 10, you can take out a negative 2. So now I'm dividing each of these by a negative 2. Negative 28 divided by 2 is going to give me a positive 14x. Divided by a negative 2. Negative 10 divided by a negative 2 is going to give me a positive 5. So I notice in both of these, I have 14x plus 5. So I'm going to write that out. And then I'm going to write what's left after that, which is x minus 2. What I want you to do is I want you to finish up this note sheet on your own. Try number 13 on your own. If you don't get it, as long as I'm not working with anyone, let's go ahead and do it together. So that concludes your note video. Thanks for listening.